Computer. Hi, Nicole. How are you doing today?
It's interesting times. I'm happy I have food in my fridge and a roof over my head, so I'm grateful for that. And I'm safe, but I think it's always interesting in the current climate because as humans we always want to be like, how are you? And especially in interviews we want to be like, I'm fine. But I think
Yeah.
it's interesting times.
It's really wonderful that you've taken the opportunity to answer it truthfully, as opposed to just glazing over how you are. Do you know? It's really important. You brought up just before we were talking, just before I hit record, how we got to talking, and I think that's a really great example. So I'm going to share my perspective of the story, if that's all right.
Of course.
Okay. So we met through somewhere, I think Instagram land, through some mutual friends. And when the Black Lives Matter movement came to a head after George Floyd's murder, you became very vocal in educating, I guess, white fragility and white ignorance in the people that you know and people that you don't know that were posting on your wall. You had such patience and clarity in educating and not allowing people to get angry with each other. It was truly inspirational. And I have to say that I often try and guide through kindness and light in every interaction that I do, and to listen with compassion. But I just kind of hit a point where I'm just so angry with racism that I finally said to somebody on your wall, basically, to shut the fuck up. And you took that moment to say, well, that's very kind of you to have my back, Jody, but this is not how we educate and teach others to be better people. So I have to say, for me, for first time breaking out of the wall, to say, you are an infuriating human being and your hate is pissing me off, to immediately have somebody who's being faced with the hate constantly, especially when things are so divisive right now, to turn around and say, there, young lady, you don't need to be hateful back. We need to guide, not scold, not angrily reply. And just the grace and compassion you handled so many of those conversations, and like your commenting feeds are like 200, 300 replies.
My Facebook wall has definitely become a war zone. And first of all, thank you for recognizing that, because I think a lot of people on my social media don't realize that they're actually arguing on a young Black woman's social media, and it is hurtful. And so first of all, I know that when that happened with us, you had like the best intentions. You were trying to protect me. But I think that's what's really interesting about that is people don't realize that if we meet confrontation with confrontation, even these really difficult conversations, what we're going to do is we're going to scare these people back into their houses. And the racism will unfortunately continue. They will teach their children the racism, the hate, or even sometimes it's not that in your face. It can be sly comments. It can be just small things. And if we don't just speak up and just stop it with kindness, even though that's really difficult, I think it will continue. And so I'm working really hard. I'm working with a professor who actually specializes in communications. And one of the things that we looked at is with what's happening, for some reason, people are reaching out to me. I've become this facilitator. It shocks me. I'm an actress, I'm a director, I'm all these things, but I never imagined that I would be this involved in politics. And sometimes in the world, you're just called to do things. And I think that it's important that I use this opportunity to help as many people as possible. So the idea that we're trying to create, because people are still coming and commenting, is the idea of something called a healing circle. And in psychology, what happens is if there's a circle of people that are dealing with an issue, the weight won't be bared so much on one person. So we're trying to create that. I'm not sure exactly how that looks, but I'm working with a wonderful professor, Pam Rogalski from UBC, actually, in Canada. And we're trying to figure out how we can actually turn, especially the Facebook wall, into that, because for some reason there's a lot of hate mail. I wake up to about 15, 25 different hate mails a day, which blows my mind.
I think that's actually a sign of people feeling it's a safe space to communicate.
I hope so.
because that's what you've been creating, is someone can say, well, you're this, that, and the other, without knowing you, based on just how you look or the color of your skin.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, thank you for recognizing these things about me that I like about myself. And let me tell you a little more about me. Well, who are you and what's your story?
Yeah.
And so because one of the things I'm kind of discovering through these conversations is there's this big unrest. There's this big, people are really struggling. It seems to me like it should be pretty straightforward. Like, let's be good.
I totally thought that at the beginning. I was like, I even made something where I was like, Black Lives Matter, end of story, because it really shouldn't be a conversation. There's really not a conversation, and then you get into looking at the structures of slavery in our prison systems, and you look at what is going on politically, and then you look at, and it trickles down and down and down. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, if we don't talk about it, then the people will never understand. So really what has to happen is these really awful, and you've seen it, you've been watching it happen, a lot of people have, and I'm very grateful for people like you who are really truly trying to understand. But what happens is they don't understand because they don't see it from our viewpoint, because they have been taught that that's just the way it is.
Right.
Just trying to be diplomatic, because the things that, you've seen them, but the things that are said to me they're horrific. Like, I've been told things like Black people are only good to be swung from trees with ropes. Like in my private messages, like people, and I'm just, so what I do with
that's not a safe space. That's just,
but what you have to do, what I do with a situation like that is I try to find one thing. So if it's like, oh, I like that picture of the cat. So or a dog I'm like, oh, where did you get that picture? So it's kind of like going in through the back door. It's not that it's not hurtful or I'm not affected. I definitely have to work with my therapist and make sure that I'm okay, but I just refuse to give up on this dismantling of racism, as a lot of people do now. But I just think that the conversation is a lot more difficult than people think.
Well, then they don't know how to have it. I've really become aware of the fact that we were brought up thinking you shouldn't talk about politics, money, or religion. And now we don't know how to talk about those things.
Right.
So this is such an important time, such an important conversation. And the fact that, as actors even, the best way to get over our nerves is how do we facilitate the story? Yeah. So the best way to get over the hate is how do we connect with this other human being? Yeah. Even if they can't see it. So that's really amazing. And then the other thing too that I kind of struggle with, Nicole, on your behalf and the behalf of many people in my life that are people of color, is how it's fallen on your shoulders to educate when it's not a Black problem, it's a white problem.
Yeah, I have actually, I will be completely honest with you, I actually struggled with that, because my first instinct is, as somebody who has been, I've been on my own since I was like 13, 16 years old. I've never had parents. Everything I've had to fight and fix and do on my own. So my first instinct is to always figure out, okay, what's wrong? How do you figure out what this person needs? And how can we get them on the right side? Right? Okay. But really, like, if you take the race out of it, if you take the politics or the money, like you said, all out of it, and you just look at them like a human being that has this viewpoint, and everybody wants to be right. We want, right now, you and I, we're like on the same side, and we want to be right. Nobody wants to be wrong. But sometimes, and even though, I'll get back to the point, but even though people are like, it's not your problem, Nicole, like, you don't need to fix the whole world. And well, different aspects of that definitely are not my problem. If I don't do it, who is going to do it? If I'm not willing to talk to, and for some reason, the majority of people, we just happen to have this, I don't even like to use the word crazy, but this situation we're specifically talking about is happening on my Facebook wall. And I think that people are like, this is not your problem, just block, delete, move on. Right. I'm like, well, but they've reached out to me. And they, for some reason, whether they felt okay to attack or whether they just felt okay to send me a private message or to engage, for some reason, they finally said they've shown themselves. Right. So, well, it is a white problem. I do agree that this is that, I also think about how we have to fix this together.
Yeah.
And if somebody feels like they're comfortable reaching out to me for whatever reason, I am not going to be, I want to make sure in this world I was the person that I was able to facilitate the start of the change. I wouldn't be able to live with if I was just like, oh, that's, because that's almost like, if you want to flip it around, that's almost like inner racism, right? We're saying it's not our problem, that's your problem. That's like totally reversed.
Well, and I struggle with that as a theory in things, because of the systems in place that, 10 Black people can beat up one white person, but that's based on the fact that they've grown up in a world of oppression for so long, created by, people who aren't of color. So, so I struggle with reverse racism as a theory, generally speaking. But I'm not. Again, I'm here to listen, even though I want to have this conversation with you. I'm here to listen, not dictate what it is. Because
I like I said when we started, I'm an open book, because I think that we all have to keep in mind that there's no right way to fix this. There's no like book or
right.
theory or professor or anyone we can say, well, these are the things that we need to do for us to understand it and for us to fix racism in the world. It just doesn't exist. And on top of that, it's going to be different for everybody. I have a few friends that are Black women and Black men who feel that what I'm doing is, they're like, that's too much, it costs me too much, and they don't want to do it. And they're like, Nicole, we don't have to do that. And I understand that, and I respect that. But for me, I am strong enough. For me, I have so many white friends, and for some reason, strangers, a woman in the Deep South, and I shared this story a few times, but I just think that it's mind blowing. She saw my, this was on my Instagram, and she reached out to me in the middle of the night. For the first couple of weeks, I'm sleeping more now, but for the first couple of weeks, I couldn't sleep. I would take calls from people in London and Ireland, like different time zones. And this woman reached out to me one night at 4 or something my time, I'm in LA now, and was like, hi, my name is such and such. I live in South Carolina, Deep South, and I want to support you and the movement, but I'm afraid because I live in a place where the Klan will burn my house down if I speak out. And so I had to just sit with her and cry and listen to her, because there's no right answer, and she lives in a place where she could get killed if she speaks out and fights for us. And so, there's that, and there's many, many stories, like the stories I have heard are mind-blowing, and there's this other beautiful actress, I feel very safe saying her name, who has been so supportive, Faith Ford, who is lovely, and in her own, I love her. I've worked with her on a beautiful film we worked, and she's, as an actress, just doing her own protest and the work that she takes on. And so this work takes many different forms, but for me, I'm strong enough, and I think that we all have to decide what we're okay and how we can keep our hearts safe. But somebody has to do the work. Somebody has to have the conversations.
As one spirit to another, I hope you recognize when to rest and how to replenish, so the connecting that you're doing to me is like you're saying, you're pulling back the layers, connecting human to human. How can we do this? And because we are at a time and there is no right answers, the fact that you are a part of the change and the healing, like that's a bit of a legacy. No matter how far your name echoes, the change you're creating in the world is echoing. And I think so. I think, again, I do think, even as horrific as these things that people are saying, they feel, I'm hopeful that it's a moment of saying, this is my dark truth. I have this hate for you, and I don't know you. And I want it to come out because I don't want to carry it by myself anymore. So if I dump it on you, then I don't have to carry it by myself anymore. So please show me the better way. I'm hoping that that's their spirit's need, is saying, please show me the better way.
I never thought, I'll be honest with you, I never thought about that, because the conversations, they started, some of them started a long time ago, like before this movement in the last month. And then there's also conversations that started right at the movement that I'm still having with people who are like sending me like the Klan rules and like the books, and they'll like ask me to read it, and then they like want me to
What,
understand
is
why they.
it supposed to change your point of view?
Well, I think that the thing is that's difficult for them. I hope it is what you're saying. I hope it is
That's
that
what I'm hoping.
their spirit somewhere and their heart is somewhere like understanding that it's wrong, but you still have to take the time to go through with them because they don't see it as wrong. And that in itself is the problem, right? So until we're willing to, and it sucks. It's not fun. Like, I've been called every name in the book. I've posted some of the nicer things that are sent to my private inbox. But the thing is that they don't see it as wrong. And that's crazy to us
Yeah.
because we have opened our eyes, but it's also, if we want to really get into it, it's also kind of like politics, right? Like some people see one side as right and one side as wrong, but here you and I have just said there's no right or wrong way to fix this. And so it's really just trying to be so sure that we believe this one thing and then trying to open their mind to what we believe. Even so, I have this really funny thing that I'm going to share that I haven't shared with anybody. This is what I call it, and it's crazy. Some of my friends were like, "Oh, Nicole, you like that's crazy," but I truly believe this is what it is, and it's basically manipulating people for the betterment of the world.
Well, that's what you're doing. That's what you're up to.
That's, like it's like, because you're really trying to, yes, we're trying to dismantle racism. Yes, the conversations I'm having are trying to show people that killing and hate is bad and that you shouldn't call people the N-word or any other derogatory term. And yes, police brutality happens in Canada. Like so many of my friends live on reserves and they're dealing with it. I've been invited and seen videos, private videos from reserves of how the native people are, and that's another thing, sorry to sidetrack, that I'm actually upset about, is that I feel like in Canada, I'm Canadian myself, just anybody who's watching so they know I live in the States now, but I feel like my home country is sitting on like this moral high ground, and a lot of the things keep saying, well, this is happening in the US, this is happening in an American problem. Well, it's not. I'm
No,
here
if you look at First Nations people, for sure, it's very similar.
It's exactly the same, but it's also a worldwide problem. The women that I'm working with, some of my friends in London and in Ireland, Ireland, it's a worldwide issue. And I know for a fact no one has the answer on how, but I do know we have to dismantle a lot of systems and structures and start fresh. There has to be a complete rebuild.
Well, we're dismantling it right now, right? Like shaking this shit to the ground.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, one of the things that just came to mind as a thought while you were talking about, I wonder why it was so important to oppress people of color. But then I realized that because on each plantation there were more slaves than there were masters. And if the slaves didn't feel like the master was more worthy in some way, then there's no reason they wouldn't be able to just live their lives, rise up and live their lives. So that's the fact that that's continued for 400 years, just based on color of skin, like systematically. And then of course, classism and financial success play such a large role in all this as well. It's mind-boggling, really. And it's 400 years at least of crap that needs to be somehow changed. So how do you have any kind of ideas how you think it's going to unfold?
Yeah, I hope that we take a really, really good look at the prison system. One of the things, and I encourage everyone to do their research, but one of the problems is that prisons and jails are mandatory to operate at maximum capacity. They're never allowed to go below maximum capacity. So if you take that one fact, and I encourage you all to Google this, I've spent hours reading this and researching this, but then what happens is then that becomes a problem because through the justice system, then the police are required to arrest more people. Well, why are they arresting more people of color, brown, Black people, et cetera, et cetera? Why? Well, because the prison and jail system is modern day slavery. And the reason that they do it is money. And so that's another thing that's very hard to explain to people, is that we are fighting slavery. We are in 2020. We are fighting slavery. There's no other way to put it. That's exactly what we're fighting for. We have fought this before. We will continue to fight. But so the first step for me, I think, is that the industries, and there's more than one. So you look at the private prisons and jails, but then you look at there's something called Alaric. If you don't know Alaric, I encourage you all to look into that. So those are the contracts. So for instance, Walmart, right? They have a contract with the prison system called Alaric, and they will make certain things in the prison system so that they can make them, like, say, I hope not, these are my beautiful French cups, but maybe this cup is made in prison. Well, what they pay people who work in prison is $2 an hour. And that's a separate subject we can talk about another time, because there's some things, but they'll pay people $2 an hour, $2 a day. To get this cup made. And then I'll buy this cup for, say, $12 or more, the sets of cups, so it all comes down to the fact that back in the day, unfortunately, they enslaved people so that they could work for free. And now they are enslaving people so that they can work for free. Yeah. It's the same, excuse my language, it's the same bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just the 13th Amendment legalizing slavery if you're in prison.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that if I'm working with a few different wonderful organizations, and one of them is Justice for Us. And we had a wonderful talk with the Democratic Party. I was invited to sit on the panel of the Democratic Party of Orange County and some panel members. But we were also talking about one of our friends who went to get a loan with his business partner. They went separate, the same bank, same age, two gentlemen, one white, one black, same bank, same loan, same business. And one was given a loan at this interest rate, and the gentleman, my brother, was given a loan at the very high interest rate. Why? Exactly the same education, exactly the same everything. And so it's far and wide. And I think that one of the first steps is dismantling, working with the 13th Amendment and changing that, and I'm not saying, some people are in prison and jail for crimes that they did commit, but a lot of people, like Khalif, if you've seen his documentary, Khalif is a gentleman who went to Rikers Island. Rikers Island is a notorious prison, unfortunately, and he was innocent. He was innocent. And he was charged with possibly stealing a backpack.
Right.
But they couldn't figure out when, how. The victim changed the story many times. The victim actually left the country. And basically what they will try to do to keep people in prison, to keep making the whatever, is they will try to get them all to take a plea deal. Because once you take a plea deal, that will follow you for the rest of your life. You will then...
Easier to put you back in prison for no reason.
Exactly. But this gentleman, Khalif, is a hero. He was actually released and all of the charges were eventually dropped, but then because he spent most of his time in solitary confinement. Sorry, I get emotional because I just know that he's representative of one person. And I know that there are so many people that are in prison for the same thing and we just don't even know about them.
Yeah.
When he finally got out, his mental issues were so bad that he ended up committing suicide. But I don't believe he took his life, but he didn't. The system made him do that.
Yeah, it killed him. I have a friend in LA who's a public defender, and she's often posting, like right now, there's a man she's trying to get out during COVID. He's been in for 9 years already for joyriding. They want him for another 7. And she's like, he's not a threat to society and we should get him out. And he's just one example of the people that she's defended who have like 25 years, for smoking a joint and maybe 2 priors of like shoplifting and, something simple. And it's a lifetime in prison. And it just, it's infuriating. It's infuriating.
Yeah, if I can help her in any way, if I can help bring
I would love to connect.
Light to her story, I'm always willing to use any of my social media outlets or speaking to help people like that in any way. So please do send her.
And she's in LA, I'll definitely connect you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And so you are an actor and a director as well, and producer. And so how long, I guess you started as an actor, I'm assuming. That's usually the pathway
Yeah.
in. And you were working on a project and you were doing a play in LA and pitched the play to Neil LaBute. And so he wrote the script and then you guys co-produced it, and that's called Black Chicks.
Yeah. He had already written the play, and I had found he has this amazing book called Exhibit A, and it's a series of some of his work. And I had been working on the play here in Los Angeles at the James Franco Studio 4, which is no longer, but we were working on it and putting it up there. And then I had to go up to Vancouver. I had some cameras that were working on the show Van Helsing, and Neil was there. And I pitched him on the idea of making this short film. And we got to make it, and it's one of my favorite pieces. I don't say that often because, you know, with work and stuff like that, it's like a painting. You don't necessarily say, oh, I'm really happy with it. Kind of like, that's my art. But I am really proud of this, and I think Neil's writing is amazing. And the log line.
Can you give us the premise?
Yeah, I'll give you the log line. You can see it on my Instagram. I put it up for free, and it's also on Neil's Contentable Entertainment on his website. And if you want a copy, I'm happy to share it. But here's the log line. It's Black Chicks. One white man, one white woman. What could go wrong?
Oh, interesting. I love his writing. I think
he's very talented.
Yeah, he's a way of, I'd like to call it a turn of phrase, but it's more a turn of humanity, you know, like he takes relationships, just kind of and shows you a different angle on it.
Yeah, he does with his writing what I think we're trying to do with these hard conversations, but in like a totally different way, where he's, you know, my opinion is biased, but he really is one of my favorite writers, and I think he really is making a change in many different ways, and has been for a very, very long time.
Well, that's great. And so when I post this video, are you open to people asking questions or commenting below for you to reply to?
Yes.
I know you're super busy, but that would be...
No, I always, I love to, I think that we have to make time for the individuals, and I always have time. I believe that a lot of people, especially in our industry, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I think a lot of people say, oh, I'm so busy. But the fact of the matter is you always have 5 minutes. You're always grabbing coffee, and you can make time. And a really important thing for me is to make time for people, because sometimes people feel comfortable only reaching out to certain people. A perfect example of that is the beautiful documentary Khalif. His story, he actually had the opportunity to meet, I know she's very controversial, but it just happened to be a part of the story, Rosie O'Donnell. And for some reason, they stayed in touch, and he just felt comfortable speaking to her. So I think that no matter what level we are at in our life or our career, we just have to stay open to helping people, because that's what we try to do with our acting and our directing anyway, is make the world a better place.
Yeah. And I do think that if we can see people for who they are, then perhaps they can do the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that's definitely what you're doing, Nicole. So thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, that means so much. It means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you for today.
Well, I think people you're resonating in a way that is, again, safe and inspiring. And so that's why people are drawn to you during this time. So I wish you great strength and light, and to be surrounded with all the kindness you need to navigate these challenging times.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole. Let's do this again.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to.
Okay, that's good.
Lots of things going on, so I would love to anytime.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.